Oh, hello. Welcome to my kitchen. I think it's about time you and I talked about some nutrition. That might be what's missing for your fitness goals. What's up, guys? Welcome back. Welcome to my home. Coming at you again to put some fat on your brain. But today we're talking about nutrition. Now, we're not going to unpack everything when it comes to nutrition. But we're going to talk about some things that I found helpful with my own fitness, as well as all the people that I work with in training circumstances and at the Barbell Club. Let's get into it. First thing, and again, I'll have my notes here to keep me on task so I don't go down too many rabbit holes with you. First thing is keep it simple. We desperately, for some reason, overcomplicate things when it comes to our fitness, to our nutrition, to a lot of the things that are the culminating factors to becoming who you want to be on your physique, functionally or aesthetically. So let's keep it simple. Let's don't overcomplicate this. And because, man, I often see people doing so. The two most important things to consider when looking at your nutrition and what you're doing or what you're not doing. I encourage you to eat more single ingredient foods more often throughout the day. And then the second thing, and the most important thing, is to prioritize that every time you eat, there's a protein source. Those two things can transform your physique if you just locked in on those. We're gonna get to some more specifics, but I wanna start with setting that up as the initial framework or foundation that we're gonna build on. More single ingredient foods more often. Every time you eat, there's a protein source, all right? So what is a good frequency to eat at if we're eating more often? That's going to depend on what time you get up in the morning and perhaps what time you go to bed. On average, I say for most people, you're gonna end up eating about every 2.5 to 3 hours. That frequency is usually 5 times is what I push people towards. Again, depending on goals, depending on where you're at, depending on how specific we have to get with your goals, some of this might change. But for like general health, wellness, and fitness, looking and feeling your best, that's kind of that's the umbrella that I'm putting over this. The frequency, again, maybe about every 2.5 to 3 hours, and let's shoot for about 5 times a day. What are single ingredient foods? As I mentioned, I want you to eat more of those more often. And I don't want to insult anyone, but we're going to get back to some basics because there's some people that are going to find this video and they're like, well, what do you mean by single ingredient foods? Well, it's just what it sounds like. Just foods that are a single ingredient, right? Rice, sweet potato, elk, bison, chicken, right? Things that are just a single ingredient food. And sometimes it's helpful for people to realize, especially if they're new to this and they're like, okay, I'm making some changes. Single ingredient foods, I'm at the grocery store. The majority of your single ingredient foods will be on the exterior of the grocery store. And when I pointed that out to some people, they're like, huh, you're right. I've never really thought of that. Obviously, you've got some outliers, right? You're going to go down an aisle to get the rice and, what have you. But single ingredient foods, just what it sounds like, a single ingredient, not processed, and typically not in a bag or a box, if that makes sense. Now, what are good protein sources? Because this is a question that comes up for me too. On the protein sources that I try to use and that I lead my clients into is I want them to be kind of lean sources. And so I don't want the protein to have an unnecessary amount of added fat or things like that. And we'll get to that in a minute, but it helps me just kind of control the macronutrients of things, again, which I'll touch on. But consider protein sources that are high in protein and that maybe don't have a ton of extra carbohydrates or fat, depending on which ones you're choosing, right? With the proteins, animal proteins are always going to be your biggest wing. And so for some people, if you're a vegetarian or vegan or some of these things, then yes, we have to work outside of that. And there's ways, but I find it's always easiest and most efficient when we can prioritize animal proteins for those protein sources. How much protein should be your goal? How much protein should you be eating a day, right? It's like, man, if I'm putting on muscle, I got to eat 10 pounds of listen, 1 gram of protein for every pound you weigh is a beautiful place to start. If you're shooting for that, more often than not, you're going to be getting the protein that you need, the adequate amount to help you not only build muscle, but to help you keep muscle. And that's something that sometimes I think that we forget. is that protein is the most important macronutrient, which is why I started this video with going, hey, second most important thing, every time you eat, there's a protein source. Regular use of leafy greens. When I put people on nutrition plans, when they come in through some of our various programs, I encourage them to have a leafy green vegetable with every meal. The reason that I do that, the leafy greens are going to be higher in fiber. Why is fiber important? When we start eating more food at this higher frequency and more protein, we want to keep the GI system happy. We want to keep things moving, right? Fiber helps with that. We want to keep you regular. Also, fiber is very important for what we're talking about when we get into the realm of insulin sensitivity. Fiber will help you essentially blunt carbohydrate sources. So it will essentially affect your gross versus net carbohydrates that you're actually consuming. I'll give you kind of a basic example that I talk to clients about, because sometimes it helps them understand. So I myself am a type 1 diabetic, trying to quit, but here we are. I was diagnosed when I was 10, so I've had it for 27 years now. I do manually what most people's bodies do automatically. So what I mean by that is if someone who's non-diabetic eats carbohydrates, body recognizes those carbohydrates in the system and will administer insulin to help push those nutrients, break them down, and keep blood glucose levels at a nice stable level. I have to do that manually. So when I eat a meal, I have to calculate how many grams of carbohydrates are in there to determine how many units of insulin I will take. So I have a carbohydrate to insulin ratio, right? Now, as I'm calculating that, and let's say the meal that I ate had 40 grams of carbohydrate. If I also know that meal had 10 grams of fiber because of the added leafy greens or what have you, then I'm going to subtract those 10 grams of fiber from my 40 carbohydrates. So instead of treating that meal like I ate 40 grams of carbs, I'm going to treat it like I ate 30. And so those grams of fiber that you're going to find in there is going to help us not have to use as much insulin. Insulin, I would put in kind of the growth hormone category, but it's a fat storage hormone if there's too much of it, essentially, right? So if we can get you eating in a way that controls how much insulin your body has to use, how big the spikes are of it, and how long those last, we can more efficiently control your body getting rid of adipose tissue and losing some body fat too. So the leafy greens, they help us with that. And again, there's some good micronutrients that we're going to get there. They're going to be helpful to us, but I like to prioritize those leafy greens. Spinach, asparagus, I put green beans in that category, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, things of that nature. Leafy greens. Please don't undervalue hydration, all right? Hydration is kind of where it starts, and I like to start my day with it, and I like to get a liter of water in kind of in the first hour that I'm awake to just get things rolling. When you've been sleeping all night, you essentially wake up almost in a dehydrated state. And so I like to start with the hydration to get it moving. You're 70% water. So if you're appropriately hydrated, it's going to help your body absorb, move around, push nutrients in a more efficient manner. So I'm just going to plug that. Do not undervalue your hydration. How much? Shoot for a gallon a day. Because even if you aren't hitting that, you're probably going to get enough for your needs. But water it's missed a lot. So prioritize your hydration there. I want you to consider macronutrient food banks when you're looking at your food. Okay? So when I put people on nutrition plans that come in for our program, I'm not having them count calories. I'm not having them weigh their food. I'm not even having them count their macros. But I am having them build their 5 meals a day from macronutrient food banks. So I give them the list of proteins that they're to use for that 6 weeks. I give them their list of carbohydrates that they're supposed to use, and I give them their fats, and I give them their vegetable list. And from there, they're building out their meals. So it gives them a chance to have some freedom, some autonomy in it, get to choose what they eat and when they eat it for a certain sense, but I am guiding them on, hey, protein every time. We're gonna have carbohydrates on these meals, just a fat on this meal. So we are giving guidance there, but we want to kind of lift it from feeling so like, arguably restrictive, or that like everything has to be weighed to the ounce. The portions that I use for a lot of people, and they're really basic, but it works. a protein the size of your palm, okay? Carbohydrate the size of your fist, fat the size of your thumb, and vegetable or leafy green the size of your fist. And obviously the meals will vary if they have a carb or a fat, but consider looking at all your food as that it lives in one of those macronutrient food banks, right? Protein's your building block, we've got to have that. And consider that your carbohydrates and your fats, those are our energy sources, right? So often when I'm helping people reach their goals, we're gonna work to not stack fats and carbs super heavy together, right? I'm gonna try to play towards one or the other on the meals that I'm designing for them. But your food should live in one of those categories. And I think that's helpful as you start working through understanding single ingredients and then getting a little bit more definition behind eating for function and letting it also be a tool. So consider which macronutrient food bank each of the single ingredient foods you're eating are going to live in, because that's going to be helpful. When it comes to eating clean, when it comes to eating for our fitness goals, and when it comes to longevity for eating this way, okay? The things that I'm talking about, I've been eating this way for a lot of years. And I eat 5 meals a day. I prep my food. I eat these single ingredients. And people often say, oh man, I bet you never eat pizza. I'm like, man, you should see me eating some pizza. Yes, I have pizza. Yes, I have burgers and fries. Yes, I do this stuff, right? But I've gotten to a spot where I know how much of that I can get away with before it's problematic to my performance, how I feel, and how I look. So what I encourage people to kind of get their brain wrapped around a little bit is eventually we want to settle into like a percentage split. And that percentage is going to vary person to person depending on how close you are to your goals and just kind of where you're at in your training, of course, as well. But that percentage split is like eventually I probably hang out in like an 85-15% split. And what I mean by that is 85% of the time I'm eating the way we're talking. Single ingredient foods at this frequency, prioritizing protein, right? And then the other 15% of the time, I eat what I want. I have the burger, fries, and milkshake. I have the pizza. I have the cookies, right? I do those things, but I've gotten to where I plug those things in very intentionally, and I know how much of that I can get away with before, again, it affects me too much on how I feel, how I look, and how I perform. When I plug those foods in intentionally, it helps me get the fix mentally, right? Because sometimes it's a mental thing. Anyone that says that food's not emotionally or mentally based sometimes just hasn't really spent much time with it then. So I get that fix of those things I was craving and I wanted, but then I always look forward to getting back to my routine because I've been doing my routine long enough that I prefer the way it makes me feel. I like the way it makes me perform in the gym. I like the way that it helps my physique look, right? So I'm always anxious to get back to that. So if the wife and I run to Vegas for the weekend, I know I'm gonna eat like an asshole, but I still train when I'm there. I still get my micronutrients, my vitamins. I still prioritize water. And then from that Friday to Monday, I'm so excited to get back Monday and get back on my routine. So you're gonna find a percentage split that works for you. And if you're a long ways from your goals and you've got a lot of work to do, your percentage split might be 95-5 for a minute. And then eventually you can get to maybe 90-10. But there's gonna be a percentage split, and the highest percentage is going to be towards what we're talking about. Single ingredient foods, more often prioritizing protein. So consider that when we're talking about longevity and integrating this into lifestyle. I say it all the time to my clients. I do not want you to diet and exercise. I want to teach you how to eat and how to train, because that's what's going to take you to the long-term fitness goals that you have. I want people to get off this roller coaster ride that they're on with their nutrition and their fitness. Stop with the yo-yo. And I get where I meet with people and they're like, man, yeah, I did the keto diet, or I did intermittent fasting, or I was weighing all my food, I was counting all my calories, and I lost this or I did that. And they're there meeting with me for the program we offer, and I go, cool, why aren't you doing it now? Something about what people were doing wasn't sustainable, or they didn't understand it enough. But typically it's the sustainability of it. Let's find a way that, again, we can get this integrated into lifestyle so that we're not just focusing on, hey, I'm on a diet and I'm exercising. No, let's teach you how to eat and train, and let's make this into your life. Now, Discipline and consistency is key, as is planning and preparation. You cannot eat the way that I'm talking without planning and preparation. Like anything, you can get that worked into your daily and your weekly systems, right? I have found that I prep on average about twice a week. My main prep is kind of on Sunday, and I make enough food to kind of get me through the next 2 to 3 days. And then as I'm making my fifth meal or my dinners throughout the week, I will intentionally make sure that things that I'm making are in excess, so I can divvy those up into my containers and continue to kind of feed my pre-prepped meals so I can grab and go in the morning and stay on plan. If I'm gonna do 2 just significant prep days and then have it set, it's typically like a Sunday and a Wednesday, and that helps me continue to feed the week. If you cook all your food for the next like 7 days on Sunday, I'm telling you what, by day 5 and 6, that chicken gets a little weird. I'm not into that. Do what you want, but I'm telling you, you're gonna have better luck breaking it up, and then you're gonna have a better opportunity for some variety, which I think helps the body and helps just everything move the direction that you're wanting it to. But you will not be able to eat 5 meals a day of single ingredient foods, prioritizing protein, if you don't plan and prepare ahead of time. It's impossible. If you're last minute, oh, I got a quick lunch break, I'm gonna run up to Albertsons and like grab some, like it's just, you can get it done in a pinch, but it's not sustainable. The only way you're gonna be successful with this is if you prep food ahead of time and then you're ready to roll. One thing I'll add on that too, I've had people where they're like, okay, I prepped all my food, so they made their rice, put it in a big container, made their chicken, put it in a big container, did their broccoli or whatever, big container, and then when it's time to eat, then they're pulling out of each one. Even that extra step of pulling it out from each container and then putting it on a plate or to a smaller container, it ends up, those big bins of food end up just staying in the fridge because it's like just enough of like a tedious pain in the ass that people won't do it. So take it one step further. Cook your food, put it in your individual containers so it's all ready to roll, and all you gotta do in the morning is you grab it, you throw it in your food bag, you throw it in your cooler, and it goes with you and you're ready to roll. Out of convenience for me, life's crazy, my first meal of the day is often a shake. And in a shake, I can get my carb if I want it in there, I get my protein, of course, I can get an added fat if I need it, I can get my leafy greens because I can put spinach in there and blend it. But my shake is always my first meal, and I take 3 meals with me in my food bag because I'm going to eat those throughout the day. And then my last meal, my 5th meal, is what I make at home. I train in the evenings typically, so after my training session, I'll come home and I'll make that 5th meal in real time. So again, don't overcomplicate it, but it's going to take some planning, some preparation. So we have to be real about that. And like anything else, again, it will get integrated into kind of your routines to where it's just like, yeah, this is what I do. Just like you've maybe got your laundry day. I do laundry on Thursdays. Cool. Well, now you're prepping food on Sundays and on, Wednesdays. And use things to your advantage, especially in the world we live in today, man. We've got pressure cookers. And I can cook frozen chicken breasts in like 10 minutes in a pressure cooker. Use crock pots. I use those a lot. So I'll put the chicken in there and put it on slow, and then by the afternoon it's ready to roll, and all I got to do is slice it up, shred it up, and then divvy it up. Rice is so quick. Put it in a rice cooker while I'm cooking my turkey burger on the stove top. It's not hard, guys, so keep it simple. And man, there's some great resources in the world we live in today, and I'm hoping that this video can be one of those for you to just get you started and just get you thinking about things a little differently. And again, whether this is brand new to you or whether you've been doing this for a while, sometimes we need to go back to basics and consider this. Am I eating at a high enough frequency? Am I prioritizing protein the way that I am? And if you are, great. If you're not, look at it, take that inventory and see where we're maybe leaking some efficiency. The results that I have seen this create for people are awesome. Awesome. I got a lady in the program right now she's been in for almost a year. She's down like 55 pounds, just crushing. And she gets asked all the time. People are like, what are you doing? Like, cause they see the changes in her, right? Like, what are you doing? She's like, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. And they're like, no, like, what is it? Is it Ozempic? And she's like, no, it's not. I'm like, well, tell us, what are you doing? She's like, I eat single ingredient foods. I eat 5 times a day, and every time I eat, there's a protein source. She goes, and then I go to the gym 3 days a week and I lift heavy weights. And they're like, that's it? He's like, yeah. Obviously, time is the biggest culminating factor there. But if we put the right systems in place, and let time do its thing and we stay disciplined and we stay consistent, really rad things can happen. So I see a lot of people changing their lives, changing their fitness, their physiques for the better, whether it's, hey, I need to lose a bunch of body fat, or man, I need to put on some muscle. It won't happen unless you're eating enough protein. I had a couple that came through my program that I had trained personally for some time, and I encouraged them to come through the program because I knew they needed the nutrition piece. So we go through the whole thing, and I have check-in meetings with people that are in the program. And when I met with them at the end of the 6 weeks, I sit down with the husband, and he's like, I'm a little confused. He goes, my 1 rep maxes have all gone up in 6 weeks. He's like, but I'm hardly ever sore. And so I was like, well, I mean, he's like, he has soreness, right? But he's like, it's not like it was. He's like, things are different. I'm like, yeah, it's because you're getting enough protein. I was kind of, I would badger them when I was training them, like, hey, like, make sure we're getting protein, make sure we're doing this. I would have these conversations, but it wasn't specific enough and it wasn't guided enough. When we got them in on that program, they started hitting things like we're talking at that frequency, and then connected the dots for 6 weeks. Again, he was having less soreness because he was having better recovery, had the protein he needed to not only keep muscle, but to build muscle. And he saw his strength going up just because he was eating enough protein. And so there's some really rad shifts that can happen from some of these simple things that we can implement. So I want this to hopefully help you guys think about some of this. And for some of you that find this, maybe to get you started and pointed in the right direction. Again, there's so much more we can unpack here and so many more specifics we can get to, but I don't want to overcomplicate this video either. And I just want to start kind of at a surface level to get you thinking about some stuff and some things that I use daily and that I talk to clients about daily. So I hope this helps. Consider your nutrition. You are what you eat, as we say. And it starts and ends with nutrition. The Barbell Club shirt says make a muscle. We don't make muscle in the gym. We build it outside of the gym. We break it down in the gym. So we've got to make sure that what we do in the kitchen is on point. All right? Abs are made in the kitchen, as they say. And I encourage you guys to take a look at your nutrition because it's going to help you feel and look and perform the way you want. So think about it, consider it. Let's build a better you.